In a world that's just constantly buzzing with information, experiences, all these demands on our attention, how do we actually make sense of it all without feeling totally scattered or, overwhelmed, maybe just lost? It's something we all deal with, I think, every single day.
Yeah.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into an ancient source. It's a really fascinating text from the Buddhist tradition, and it offers some truly profound insights into managing our awareness, finding some real mental stability.
And this text is the Uddesavibhaṅgasuttaṃ. It translates roughly as the Discourse on the Detailed Exposition of the Summary.
Right. So our mission basically is to unpack this incredibly concise, almost you could say cryptic teaching given by the Buddha himself. And then we'll explore the brilliant, really detailed explanation given by one of his top disciples, Venerable Mahākaccāna.
Yeah, it's a great story in itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
So try and picture the scene with us.
Yeah.
You're maybe at Jetavana and Athabhyavasha's park near Savatthi way back hundreds of years ago. The Buddha is there talking to his monks. He gives this profound, very short statement. It's a summary of a really vital path.
And then?
Maybe this is the surprising part. He just gets up from his seat and leaves. No more explanation. Just gone.
Exactly. And that short statement, that's the core teaching. It's called the Uddesa, the summary. The Buddha tells his monks, basically. A bhikkhu should examine in such a way that as he examines, his consciousness is not scattered or diffused externally, nor established internally.
Okay.
By not clinging, he is not agitated. When consciousness is not scattered or diffused externally and not established internally, by not clinging for one who is not agitated, there is no future arising of suffering, old age, and death.
Wow. That is incredibly dense, isn't it? Like you said, a summary. It's like a zip file of wisdom. So for the monks actually sitting there, what was the immediate challenge? Just hearing that and then silence.
Well, yeah. It's clearly a powerful seed of a teaching, absolutely. But, for a seed to really grow, it needs some cultivation, some explanation. Imagine being handed, I don't know, the final equation for something huge, but with none of the steps shown. The monks knew it was significant. You can bet on that. But the brevity? It just left them needing clarity. They're left thinking, okay, but what does this actually mean for us? How do we practice this?
Right. So the Buddha's gone. His words are hanging in the air, and there's this real dilemma among the monks. They need this explained, so they start talking among themselves. Okay, who here can actually unpack this for us? Who has that kind of wisdom? And pretty quickly, they all agree. Venerable Mahākaccāna, he was apparently highly praised by the Buddha himself and deeply respected by everyone for his sharp mind and his ability to explain these deep ideas.
And this is where the narrative really takes a turn, because when the monks go find Mahākaccāna and ask him, can you please explain this? His first response is fascinating. He uses this analogy. He says, look, it's like someone who needs the core wood, the essence of a giant tree. But they walk right past the root, right past the trunk, and start searching for it way out in the branches and leaves.
Okay, so he's saying...
He's saying the Buddha, the source. He was just here. He calls the Buddha the I, knowledge, Dharma, Brahma, the teacher. The ultimate source was right in front of you. Why didn't you ask him? It's this beautiful moment of humility, real reverence for the Buddha as the root, the ultimate teacher.
But the monks... they don't give up easily. They respectfully say, yes, absolutely, the Buddha's wisdom is supreme, of course. But they basically say, look, you are also incredibly highly regarded, praised by the Buddha himself for your ability to analyze. Please explain it for us. They really make it clear how much they value his specific understanding. It really tells you something about his reputation.
It does. And seeing how genuine they were, how earnest, it wasn't just idle curiosity. It was a real hunger for understanding. Mahākaccāna's reluctance softens. He sees they truly need this guidance. So he agrees. He says, okay, listen, I'll share my understanding. And this explanation he gives, this is the Vibhaṅga, the detailed exposition.
Okay, so here we go. He starts to peel back the layers of the Buddha's statement, bit by bit. Let's take the first part. What does it mean for consciousness to be scattered or diffused externally? The Pali was Bahida Viññāfikata Visanti.
Right. So Mahākaccāna explains this happens whenever your consciousness encounters something through your senses. You see a sight, you hear a sound, smell something, taste something, feel a touch, or even just think a thought or feel an emotion, and your mind gets entangled with it. It follows the sign, that's like the attractive feature or the essence of the thing. It gets caught up in the gratification, the pleasure or interest it sparks. Then it becomes bound by that delight, and finally yoked like an ox to a cart by the fetter of that gratification. Basically, you're hooked.
Okay, so that sounds, very familiar. It's like you pick up your phone just to check the time, and suddenly an hour's gone and you've been scrolling endlessly through social media feeds, your mind just got pulled out by each new post, each sign.
Exactly.
And got stuck in that little hit of gratification, that dopamine loop or whatever. Your attention is just pulled outwards and like stuck there. Almost feels involuntary sometimes.
That's a perfect modern example. Your mind is drawn to that sign, it clings to that fleeting bit of interest or pleasure, and boom, you're yoked to the scroll.
Yeah.
Trapped. So the opposite state then is consciousness not scattered or diffused externally. Bahida viññata avikita avisanti. This is when you encounter those same sights, sounds, thoughts, whatever. But your consciousness does not follow that external sign. It doesn't get entangled by attachment to the pleasure. It's not bound by delight, not yoked by that fetter.
So it's not like becoming a zombie or ignoring the world around you.
Not at all. It's more like conscious engagement without the emotional entanglement. You see it, you hear it, you perceive it, but you don't get swept away. You're not captive to it. Think of it like seeing a tempting cake in a shop window. You can appreciate it looks delicious, maybe even note the skill of the baker, but you don't get immediately sucked into a craving that takes over your mind. You observe without getting hooked.
Okay, that makes sense for dealing with the outside world. But then Mahākaccāna goes deeper, right? He talks about the internal landscape, consciousness established internally. This isn't about external chaos, is it? This is something more subtle.
Much more subtle, yes. This refers to the mind becoming attached or sort of fixated on internal states, specifically pleasant feelings or states that arise in deep meditation, the jhanas. Mahākaccāna actually goes through the first 4 jhanas. These are states of deep concentration and bliss. He explains how consciousness can start to follow and cling to the joy and pleasure of the first jhana, which arises when you detach from sensual desires. Or it can cling to the even deeper joy and concentration of the second jhana, or the peaceful pleasure and equanimity of the third jhana, or even cling to the pure, subtle equanimity of the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain.
Wow, okay, so that's the real aha moment here, isn't it? Even these incredibly positive, peaceful, desirable states achieved in meditation.
Exactly. Even those can become a subtle form of clinging. If your consciousness gets established there, fixated on them, attached to having that experience, then it's still clinging. It's attachment to the experience itself, however sublime it might be. It's not about the state itself being bad, but about the mind fixing on it, wanting to hold on to it.
That is really profound. It sort of flips the script on what we might think of as spiritual goals sometimes.
Right.
So then, consciousness not established internally, ajita jitaya asanitanti, that must mean experiencing these jhanas, these deep states.
Right.
But the mind doesn't follow them in that sticky way. It doesn't cling, isn't bound by them, isn't yoked by the pleasure or peace they bring.
Precisely. It's experiencing them fully, but without forming an attachment, without building an identity around, I am someone who achieves jhana. You experience it and let it go. It's a very fine but crucial distinction.
Okay, so we have not scattered outside, not established inside. What's the next piece? This agitation by clinging. Anupadaya paritasan.
Right. This gets to the heart of why all this matters. Mahākaccāna explains this is the agitation, the fear, the sort of background anxiety and expectation that arises in what he calls an uninstructed ordinary person, a puthujjano. This person regards the different aspects of their being, their body, form, their feelings, their perceptions, their mental habits or intentions, formations, their consciousness itself. These 5 aggregates, they see these as self, or they think, this belongs to me, this is mine.
Yeah, which is pretty much how most of us operate, right? We instinctively identify with our body, our feelings, our thoughts. I am angry. This is my opinion. I look like this.
Exactly. That's the default mode. And the inevitable consequence, Mahākaccāna points out, is that when any of these things change, which they always do, because everything is impermanent, your body ages, feelings shift constantly, thoughts come and go, consciousness flickers. When that change happens, the consciousness that's identified with it follows that change with distress. That change feels like a threat to the self. And this deep-seated clinging, this false identification with what's fundamentally changing, that's what causes the agitation, the fear, the suffering.
I can totally relate to that. You know, when your physical appearance changes or a feeling you liked disappears or your self-image gets challenged, there's often this real sense of distress, of loss. We're clinging to something that was never solid to begin with, like you said earlier, trying to hold on to water.
That's a great way to put it. So the opposite state, the goal, is no agitation by not clinging. Anupadaya aparitasana. This, he says, is the state of the instructed noble disciple, the Arya Savaka, the This person has learned, has understood. They do not regard these 5 aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, formations, consciousness, as self or as belonging to self. Therefore, when these things inevitably change or cease, their consciousness does not follow that change with agitation or fear. Why? Because there's no clinging, no false identification happening in the first place. The result is this profound absence of agitation, fear, vexation, worry about the future based on these changing things.
So that's the freedom.
That's the freedom. What's truly fascinating here is that it comes directly from seeing things as they are impermanent, constantly changing, and ultimately not a solid, graspable self. This freedom isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's actually a radical kind of embrace. You can fully experience everything: joy, sorrow, success, failure. But your fundamental well-being, your sense of self, isn't dependent on them. It's like, imagine being a really skilled surfer. You don't fight the waves. You don't cling desperately to the board, hoping the ocean will become still. You learn to ride the waves, to move with the constant change. That's non-clinging.
That's a powerful image. Okay, so Mahākaccāna lays all this out, this incredibly detailed map.
Yes, this full vibhanga.
And the monks presumably are taking all this in. What happens next? They go back to the Buddha?
They do. They go back and report everything Mahākaccāna said, his entire detailed explanation, word for word.
And the Buddha's reaction.
He completely endorses it. He praises Mahākaccāna, calls him wise and greatly discerning. And then he gives the ultimate validation. He says, essentially, if you had asked me, I would have explained it in exactly the same way he did. And he concludes, that is its meaning, and so you should remember it. Full marks for Mahākaccāna. A complete confirmation of his deep insight.
Wow, what a story. Okay, so just to recap for everyone listening, you've just heard this deep dive into a really amazing ancient text. We started with this very brief, profound teaching from the Buddha, which kind of left his disciples hanging, needing more clarity. Then we saw how Venerable Mahākaccāna stepped up and meticulously unpacked it all, explaining consciousness being scattered outside, established inside, and agitated by clinging.
And how freedom really comes from avoiding those patterns, understanding that clinging is the root of the agitation.
And finally, the Buddha himself gives it his seal of approval.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember this isn't just some, ancient history lesson or a philosophical curiosity. This framework they developed is incredibly powerful for navigating your own mind right here, right now. It helps you understand why that feeling of information overload is so overwhelming. That's your consciousness getting scattered externally, pulled out by every notification, every demand. And it illuminates why even striving for peace or success or any positive state can sometimes feel like a trap if you get too attached to it. That's consciousness becoming established internally, clinging even to good things.
Right. It really highlights the root of so much of our day-to-day stress and anxiety. This habit of clinging to things, experiences, ideas, identities that are, by their very nature, constantly changing. So here's something to maybe mull over after listening. A final thought for you. If even those profound, peaceful states people reach in deep meditation, if even those can be a source of subtle establishment, a potential object of clinging, what does that tell us about our relationship with all the ordinary stuff? The everyday success, moments of happiness or achievements, our jobs, even our sense of who we are, our self-identity. How often are we maybe unknowingly clinging tightly to things or parts of ourselves that are fundamentally impermanent, and in doing so, creating our own stress, our own agitation? What would it truly mean in your life, day to day, to be not agitated by non-clinging,